Good. Can you all hear us at this point?
Yes, we can.
There we go. That should be an IT. All right, let's get going here. So with the time being 1:31, I will call the July 10th, 2024 STRGBA GSA meeting to order. Thank you for joining us here in the room. Starting at the far end, we've got Mike Fitcock from City of Waterford. We've got Christy McKinnon from Stanislaus County. Darren Smallin from City of Riverbank. We've got Ian Sather from City of Oakdale. And next to me here, we've got Jesse Franco from MID. And to my right, I've got Tim Barahona from City of Modesto. So we're all here. All the member agencies are in attendance, which is great. So we have a quorum. We'll move on to item 2. This is business from the public. So at this time, anyone interested is welcome to introduce any topic within the agency's jurisdiction. Matters presented under this heading may be discussed, but no action will be taken by the agency at this meeting. It is not required, but speakers may provide their name and address. Public comments will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. So we will open it up to the public. All right, no one in the room. I don't see any hands up on the phone. We'll move on to item number 3. This is the June 5th, 2024 STRGBA GSA meeting minutes. Assuming everybody's had a chance to review those minutes, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, you have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Before we move to a vote, I'll give a chance for the public to provide any input. See none, hearing none, see nobody on the phone. Proceed to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4. This is the resolution adopting a revised GSP and documenting the commitment to develop and implement a well mitigation program and management actions in the Modesto groundwater subbasin. We're going to start this off with a presentation by Liz Elliott from Todd Groundwater.
Hi, Eric. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'll be sharing.
Just a second, Liz. Sorry. It looks like the audio is through my computer here. Ooh. Okay. I think we're good. Go ahead, Liz.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. And can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks again for having me. I'll be sharing this presentation with Dominic from Woodard and Curran. And the purpose of today's presentation is to, on a high level, summarize all the revisions that were made to the GSP. As you all probably know, the revised GSP is due to DWR next Tuesday, the 16th. So we are basically finished with it. So the deficiency letter, or the determination letter that we received from DWR in January, had 2 deficiencies. The first one was that the GSP does not provide sufficient information to support the selection of chronic lowering of groundwater levels sustainable management criteria. And what this had to do with was the fact that in the GSP, the original GSP that was submitted in January 2022, interim milestones for 2027 were defined at wells in the Oakdale Irrigation District management area and the non-district east management area below the minimum threshold. So the 2027 interim milestones were below the minimum thresholds and in these 2 management areas. And DWR asked us to analyze the effects of groundwater levels declining from the MTs, below the MTs, to the IMs by 2027. And so this deficiency had two corrective actions, or three corrective actions, I should say. The first one, which is here, and I'm not going to read all of this text to you, but basically DWR wants to know what effects going to the 2027 interim milestones that are below the minimum thresholds might have on beneficial uses and users of groundwater. Specifically, they asked for a well impacts analysis. So that's what was done, conducted a well impacts analysis. What we did was we used records of all water supply wells in the subbasin that had construction information. This database that we put together had about 4,500 water supply wells. We then compared the minimum threshold and the interim milestone elevations at the representative monitoring wells. These are the wells that are monitored as part of the GSP monitoring network. We compared the MT and IM elevations to the total depths of these water supply wells. And what the results showed was that there were approximately 29 wells at risk of being dry at the 2027 IM. So this, in essence, is the potential impact of groundwater levels, impact to wells of groundwater levels declining from the MT to the IM. And we revised Chapter 6 of the revised GSP, which is the Sustainable Management Criteria chapter. The second corrective action, DWR asked for a well mitigation plan. They wanted to know, well, how are you going to mitigate the wells that may be going dry based on the first part of your analysis? And so the GSAs developed a resolution that commits them to developing and implementing a well mitigation program by January 31st, 2026. This resolution will be voted on and hopefully approved by the GSA today. And it will be provided in an appendix to the revised GSP. So this resolution and the well mitigation program is introduced and described in the same chapter, Chapter 6, Sustainable Management Criteria. The third corrective action associated with this first deficiency, DWR is asking the GSAs to look at what effect going to the 2027 IM, where below the MT, what impact that might have on other sustainability indicators. And so there were three different sustainability indicators that they asked us to look at. The first one was land subsidence. So we analyzed the impact of the 2027 IM on the land subsidence sustainability indicator. Now, the Western subbasin is the most susceptible to land subsidence because it's underlain by the Corcoran clay. The Eastern subbasin is less susceptible because it's more consolidated and there's no known regional clay zone like the Corcoran clay in the East. Now, all of the representative monitoring wells that have 2027 IMs that are below the MTs are in the Eastern Principal Aquifer and far from the edge of the Corcoran clay. And so therefore, it's pretty safe to conclude that lowering groundwater elevations to these 2027 IMs will not result in groundwater elevations declining to below the top of the Corcoran clay, and therefore impacts on land subsidence are unlikely. We also looked at degradation of water quality. So we analyzed the impact of the 2027 IMs on degradation of water quality. And this analysis focused on water quality from gamma wells with known well construction. We compared hydrographs at the representative monitoring wells to water quality at nearest gamma wells for the 7 constituents of concern that were identified in the GSP. So we looked at hydrographs and compared them to chemical concentration graphs of these COCs throughout the subbasin. We looked at hundreds and hundreds of these charts. So we were using the best available data for this analysis. But when comparing the groundwater levels to the water quality trends, there was no clear relationship between the two. And so the absence of relationship suggests that lowering groundwater levels should not affect the degradation of water quality sustainability indicator. The third sustainability indicator that we looked at is interconnected surface water. So again, we focused on the representative monitoring wells in the interconnected surface water monitoring network that have 2027 interim milestones that are below the minimum thresholds. And these occur on the Stanislaus and Tuolumne rivers, not the San Joaquin. So we focused on those wells. And at those wells, we compared the MT and the IM elevations at those wells to the nearest stream node invert elevations along each river. And those invert elevations are from the model, and they're defined approximately every half mile along each stretch of those two rivers. And what we found was that there are two representative monitoring wells that are more than a mile from the Stanislaus River, where both the minimum threshold and the IM are below the nearest stream invert elevation. And at these two wells, the difference in elevation between the MT and the IM was about 13 or 14 feet. So the question is, will lowering groundwater levels 13 or 14 feet at these two wells, more than a mile from the river, cause an undesirable result at the river? And an undesirable result, as defined in the GSP, is increased stream flow depletion. And the answer is, it's uncertain. We don't know. The GSP recognizes that groundwater conditions along the river boundaries are a data gap. And the DWR is currently working on guidance documents that have not been published, that they plan to publish in the near future, to help with the interconnected surface water sustainability indicator and help GSAs understand how to fill data gaps. So we'll be using these future guidance documents to help fill data gaps and help us understand, kind of get a better certainty about the effect that this might have along the rivers. And this is something that will probably be, this analysis will probably be done in the a periodic evaluation that's due in 2027. So for these sustainability indicator analyses, again, the revisions that were made to the revised GSP were to Chapter 6, Sustainable Management Criteria, several sections. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Dominic to go through deficiency number 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. So deficiency number 2 is really the main focus of targeting what is the basin going to do about achieving sustainability? What are projects and management actions that we are going to use to effectively, what it says here, mitigate overdraft and provide a feasible path to achieving sustainability? This deficiency was also accompanied by 2 corrective actions. Liz, go to the next slide, please. And these 2 corrective actions are very in line with one another. There's a lot of overlap. So for at least for the sake of this conversation, we've broken them into 2 components here, really to be able to focus your attention kind of in the path that the GSA and our team took to outline and to really make sure that we could adequately address these for the sake of TWR. And so really my focus on this corrective action is really to focus on kind of the middle section to the where it specifically is addressing that the GSAs need to describe a feasible and effective projects and management actions that are commensurate with our understanding of the aquifer system, and ultimately be able to provide that level of detail to the department to ensure that we're communicating well and that we can hold each other accountable for our long-term sustainability. Next slide, please. So our response to that as a GSA is really 2-point. One is really to reaffirm the commitments to our basin's long-term sustainability, and not just our long-term sustainability, but acknowledging that we have a very tight timeline to really begin to turn the ship around, to mitigate, to arrest overdraft, and to be able to be on the recovery path. And so one of the major steps that we've taken is that the GSAs are going to, and the member agencies are going to be showing that commitment, is that right away, effectively today, our goal is to have an approved resolution committing the GSAs to be able to develop management actions within a year, by January 31st, 2026, so about a year and a half. And then about a year after that, have those management actions fully implemented by beginning of 2027, so that which will effectively meet our long-term goal for the inflection point. And so as you can kind of see here, our ultimate conclusions is really to reaffirm and to show that strong commitment to being able to achieve sustainability no matter what, to effectively build a backstop, which will be our projects and management actions to guarantee sustainability in the eyes of the state. And then the second item here I have here is that really the goal of this is to develop management actions to really ensure that we reach that inflection point, that we halt the overdraft that we've seen over our recent history, and that we are on the path to recovery. Next slide, please. Okay, so effectively, how did we do that? So really, there's several steps that we took. Ultimately, this started with a much more detailed water budget analysis. And so if anybody's kind of been actively involved both with the development of the original GSP or any of the annual reports, you know that on a regular basis, we develop a water budget from land surface, the stream system, as well as the aquifer. And every year we build on a little bit onto the model to really improve and hone our understanding of what is occurring in the basin. And so one of the things that we really wanted to do is to provide additional detail to the state to really rise beyond, far beyond what I would consider kind of the minimum value that we can, to really show as much detail as we can to the state, so that both from our perspective, we can really understand the basin and to be able to really fine tune and hone our projects and management actions, but also to be able to provide the state with the level of detail they need to be able to assess our conditions as we move forward, both for our benefit and for theirs, to make sure we can kind of hold each other accountable as we move forward in the near future. So ultimately, throughout this water budget analysis, one of the major conclusions that we came to is that, yes, the subbasin has been in an overdraft since the adoption of the GSP, but we also acknowledge that the subbasin has been operating similar to what we projected, what we anticipated as far as hydrologic conditions, operations, that we are accurately simulating the conditions of the basin, our operations, and that we're basically on the path to be able to show the state that we're meeting our goals of overdraft and recovery. And so our goal is to basically share a lot of that information with WR. The revised GSP will have a lot of additional detail in Chapter 5, which is the water budget section, and that way we can kind of continue and fine tune the conversation between us and DWR. Next slide, please. Okay, so corrective action number 2, really focused on this, is again similar to the previous though, but this one I think is really much more focused on the concepts of the projects and management actions themselves, right? We built the foundation with our understanding of the basin when we looked at our water budgets, and the corrective action number 2 is to basically provide a lot of additional detail and from both a project and a management action perspective, to show the state that we have the tools in the toolbox ready and available to meet any needs that occur, regardless of what the future holds for us. Next slide. Okay, so and our response to DWR for that is really the documentation of 2 things. One, first, management actions, and second, we have projects. This is a little bit of a change in paradigm between what we have for the original GSP and what we have here. And this comes back with a lot of conversations we had, a lot of consultations with DWR staff, really discussing and ensuring that we have the tools to basically guarantee sustainability. And so this comes with effectively the prioritization of management actions over projects to act as that backstop. Again, ultimately, our goal is to have enough supply side projects bring enough water to the basin so that we don't have to enact a lot of these management actions, but we want to make sure that that backstop is there to guarantee conditions for whatever we have in the future, whether that is hydrologic uncertainty, whether that's implementation of those projects, stakeholder involvement, whatever effectively the world throws at us. We want to make sure we have the tools ready in our back pocket to be able to adapt nimbly and effectively. So the management actions that we put in the revised GSP include kind of 3 main components. One is the pumping management framework, a potential groundwater allocation program, a groundwater extraction and surface water use accounting and monitoring program, and ultimately just being able to set forth the very foundation of what tools could be used Again, these are, we've set out the framework, but the management actions themselves, we're going to continue to work through those. And what we've done is we've made a commitment to DWR to have these developed no later than the beginning of 2027. So again, none of these have been, the details haven't been fleshed out, but these are a few ideas that the GSAs have been working through and will continue to work through over the next few years until they're fully implemented in 2027. And one of the main reasons for all these management actions is twofold. Again, similar to how I said a moment ago about how we want to basically account or be able to plan for a variety of uncertainties. And so we've taken this two-pronged approach that the basin will have the ability to achieve sustainability with or without projects or without management actions. And so basically we did a lot of modeling. We worked with the GSA and the member agencies here to effectively come to the conclusion of, in the complete absence of projects, to understand the level of demand reduction that would in theory be necessary to meet our sustainability objectives. Again, we hope to not use those, but they are available, and the GSAs are committed that without those supply side solutions, that there are demand-based solutions that we will have that are at least we're ready and available. Next slide. Okay, so then it brings us to projects. Again, this is really what we are ultimately hoping, right? So we're hoping to operate projects in tandem with the management actions that I described a second ago to really fully kind of, the goal is to potentially offset as much of the demand reduction that we can while still achieving sustainability. And so what we intend on to be able to do is to develop enough projects to completely offset the need for demand reductions. And so what we've done is we've worked with the member agencies, and that we've kind of estimated a variety of projects. We've incorporated those out of a lot of detail into the GSP related to those projects. But ultimately, there's an estimate of almost 72,000 acre feet of supply that we are intending at full build out that may be available for operation within the basin. And so even again, without management actions, once fully built out, the goal under ideal circumstances would be that these projects will be able to meet our sustainability goals. And that's what we did we utilized our integrated surface and groundwater model to estimate what the impacts of these projects are. And that we've basically made the assessment that these projects, once fully implemented, also have the ability to completely mitigate overdraft, and not only mitigate overdraft, but will increase our total aquifer storage so that we effectively be gaining storage, gaining water levels of about 2,000 acre feet per year. And so in conclusion, that whether or not we have projects or we have management actions, we have those documented and available in the GSP to show DWR that we have a feasible means to not only raise groundwater levels, but avoid the undesirable results from the whole slew of the S&Cs that we've discussed. And then the one last caveat that I wanted to add here is that the basin is going to be using a lot of we're going to be using a lot of data, hard data from our monitoring networks and other empirical information, that we're not just relying everything on effectively what the model says. It is an outstanding tool that we have to help us forecast into the future and to really assess a lot of these conditions, whether it's under projected or any of these projects and management actions. But ultimately, the basin is going to be judged on observed information. And so we are building into these PMAs the ability to adaptively manage the subbasin and be able to escalate or mitigate as much of our impacts as we can, depending on what the conditions are. So again, building in that adaptive management into our plan for the GSP. Okay, so when it comes to the total documentation of all these steps, effectively, kind of as I mentioned a little bit ago, we have pretty major refinements to Chapter 5, which is the water budget section. So effectively, we're providing a lot of additional detail on projected conditions, climate change conditions, sustainable yield, and our projects. And so we put all that additional hard data from the model, incorporating that into the water budget chapter, as well as providing a narrative and helping to ensure DWR understands what numbers we're getting from the model, and not only what the numbers are, but how they're being used, how the basin intends on utilizing that information to the fullest. And then chapter 8 and chapter 9 are similar into one another in that they outline both the projects, the management actions in detail, kind of where we stand on our near-term implementation, but also what's our long-term schedule and effectively what are we doing to be able to achieve sustainability, not only today, but for our milestones in 2027 and ultimately 2042. That's it. Pass back to Liz.
Thanks, Dominic. So a couple more slides. We wanted to end sort of to summarize the resolution. So one thing that was clear during our consultation meetings with DWR over the last almost 6 months is that they really wanted to see commitment and a clear timeline from the GSAs in the subbasin for a couple of things. One is the well mitigation program. So they wanted us to develop and implement a well mitigation program, but they understood that the 6-month period wasn't long enough to do that. And they understood that was just, it was just not possible. And so this resolution is committing the GSAs to develop and implement this program and the GSAs are committing to an initial budget in the amount of $300,000. And they will develop and implement this program no later than January 31st, 2026. So about 1.5 years from now. The second thing is about management actions. GWR wanted to see a commitment and timeline for developing and implementing management actions. And that is exactly what this resolution does. So this resolution says that management actions will be developed, including a fee structure or identified sources of funding no later than January 31st, 2026. And it commits to implementing these management actions no later than January 31st, 2027, 1 year later. And once implementation begins, it'll continue into perpetuity unless otherwise directed by the GSAs. And lastly, we wanted to give you a sense of what the next steps are. Clearly, right now, we're focused on finishing this revised GSP today. The hope is to adopt the revised GSP, and then it is due to DWR next Tuesday, the 16th. And we're actually hoping to upload it and get it submitted by the end of this week. And then once this is submitted and we look to the future, we're going to be continuing to implement the GSP. And so as I just summarized with the resolution, by January 31st, 2026, a well mitigation program will be developed and implemented. Management actions will be developed. And then 1 year later, January 31st, 2027, these management actions implementation will begin. The goal here is to achieve the inflection point in groundwater elevations by 2027. And then in 2027, we will owe the state our periodic evaluation, which is the 5-year update. And so that's what we're looking at after this is done. Any questions?
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Dominic. Really good summary. So we did meet with DWR again last week, last Monday, and they provided some positive feedback, so that was encouraging. The document was out for review. We did receive some comment letters. Those comments were really related to development, funding, cost, fees, and implementation of the management actions. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's the next step. So there were no necessary red lines, revisions that needed to be done. All the agencies have now approved, the member agencies, their individual councils and boards have now approved the independent resolution. We're here to approve the resolution as a GSA at this point, which is essentially identical to what was approved at all of the member agencies meetings. Moving forward, I would intend, my intention would be to get this submitted, but also not waste any time. I think we're really going to need to have a consultant that helps us out to not only facilitate, but really moving forward development of the MAs and also administration ultimately. So it's probably going to be a long-term type of contract that we're going to want to enter into. Jesse's kind of helping out, trying to come up with a draft for our consideration and ultimately potentially approval to put out in the street to get a consultant on board. In the meantime, I don't want to wait until that happens, if and when that happens. So I would like to work with the GSP revision ad hoc to start to formulate a committee, another committee that would be a stakeholder committee that would involve the public, obviously. What I would envision is that GSP revision ad hoc committee could help provide and formulate questions, goals, content for those stakeholder committee meetings. And the first step after I meet with the GSP revision committee would be to essentially go out for a solicitation of interest period, see how much interest there is from the public, and I would hope that we'd have public and member agencies involved in that. We can't have a quorum if the agencies, what we'll end up having, I think, would be the GSP revision committee, ad hoc committee would be on the stakeholder committee as well, whatever we end up calling that. But member agencies that still want to attend, they could, but they wouldn't be able to provide input at those meetings. But I would like to have public and member agencies, like representation, at least in every management area, because a lot of the comments that have come back is whether these management actions are going to be implemented as a whole or independently, differently in each of the management areas that we have. So we need to flush some of those questions out. So having that representation is important. So with that, I will open it up for questions or comments from the committee here, the member agencies on Liz's presentation, the resolution, and generally that plan moving forward.
There's a lot of interest. Could we consider having a public ad hoc meetings?
It will still be a public committee. That's what I would envision. I mean, we'll have our ad hoc or GSP revision ad hoc first to be able to, we need to have structure at those meetings and content to get us to make progress, to continue to make steps forward. But yeah, all those meetings will be open to the public. It's just that we will only have a select, let's say we get 50 members of the public that are interested in being on that committee. I don't want a committee that's 50 members, so we'll probably narrow it down a little bit if that's the case. If we get 16 members, 16 people applying to be part of the committee, maybe we have 16 members, but we'll move forward once we get that solicitation of interest period closes and we see what we get, how much interest we get. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll open it up to the public for any comments, questions on the feedback on the resolution and adopting this GSP. Yep. Yeah, if you don't mind turning on the microphone, people on the phone will be able to hear you at that point.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, just a suggestion on that committee that you're forming, the ad hoc committee will be part of that, but you're looking for agencies and the public, the general public, to be involved. That's kind of what the WAC committee is right now. So that suggestion is something in that form. That's what you have with Stanislaus County. Each agency has a representative there, and public also are picked as representatives there. So you don't want to pick them, you want them to have interest, right? And that's what you're looking for. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Director Byrd. Okay, nobody else in the room here. Stacy, you have your hand up.
Thanks so much. Just a quick question. Are you guys posting the comment letters on the STRGBA's website that you've received to date?
Yeah, we have. I've talked to Jennifer about that, and we do plan on doing that. We haven't had a chance to do it yet. We've got to make a couple of modifications and to the website to be able to do that. But we ultimately will be posting those as we have in the past when we adopted our last GSP.
And then will you be making an announcement about this public participation solicitation? Is that going to be during the next GSA meeting, or is it going to be done in a different format?
I'm gonna get with the GSP revision ad hoc committee to make that decision, but in my head before coming to this meeting, I'm trying to think about all the moving parts and pieces here. But definitely at least over our email blast list. So if there's anybody on the phone, I would encourage you, if you're not already part of that list, that contact list, that would be definitely an avenue of getting the word out. I hope that I don't have to wait until the next meeting to start that solicitation of interest period. I'm hoping to put something up a little sooner and solicit that interest before then, so that maybe we can even come back to the board with an update at our next meeting.
Thank you so much for all you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your input. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Public comment? Yep. Just make sure the green light's on there for me.
It's on.
Perfect. Thank you.
In relation to communication
Hmm.
and submitted letters of comments and concerns, each of one of our agencies has received individual letters.
Mhm.
So what I'm hoping is that between all of you, you can share all of that and make sure that all of it is posted. What came to MID, what came to the county, what came to Waterford, Oakdale, and OID.
Right.
And then it's all there. And no one's unable to see everything once you
Right.
update the website.
Yep. And I did whatever I received. So we have a contact email. And so most of those letters, not all of them, went to that email. And I made sure to distribute it, whatever one I had, to all the member agencies as well. And every one that we received, we have, we are ready to post. So everybody will be able to see everything if they haven't seen it already.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director.
Mr. Chairman, members,
Director Orvis.
it is.
Yes, great.
I
didn't shut it off.
As like
So I can see the direct
President Byrd, as a member of the WAC, I caution you. Smaller is more efficient.
Mhm.
WAC is 21 members, and if WAC has a quorum, sometimes we are lucky. So, if you can get an odd number that's a hard charging group that's there all the time, that's probably the best bet. You're gonna have representation from each of your member agencies. That's an automatic. Much like the WAC has from each supervisorial district and then certain groups. So I just, you're in something that needs to be efficient, fast, and cut the BS and quick communication lines. So I encourage you to not limit the size, but make the size a working size. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, President Orvis. Okay, anybody else? All right, if there's no other comments or questions here from the member agencies, I'll entertain a motion. Motion to approve the resolution as drafted. All right, Tim, thank you. Timothy. Second. Thank you, Mike. One more chance. Anybody before we take a vote? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Phew.
I would like to say thanks to Eric, Emily for drafting the resolution. That was a big effort. Thanks to Liz and Dominic, their teams. Fantastic job putting it together, completing it on time. Yeah.
Nice, yeah. Great effort by all. Glad to have that behind us. Looking forward to getting approval from DWR.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so the next, oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys. This has been obviously a race the last 6 months. We've done a ton of work, and I really appreciate all of your feedback and reviews and just all the meetings and everything the last 6 months. You guys have been really, really great to work with. So thank you.
Yep, appreciate all your efforts, Liz and Dominic and team. Thank you for that. All right, next meeting is going to be is scheduled for August 14th, 2024, obviously, at 1:30 p.m. Plan to be here at OAD office again. And stay tuned for other developments with the stakeholder committee, and we'll arrange a meeting with the GSP revision ad hoc committee as well. Questions, comments, feedback on the next meeting date? Nothing from the member agencies here, anything from the public? All right, so we'll move along. Committee comments and reports? Any comments or reports? Yep. Christie.
So the Sigma Services MOU that we approved, that was in draft form, but we didn't need to make any revisions. So is that the one that we're gonna work with? Okay, signature. So
That was the contract,
Right.
the MOU, I guess was. Okay, yep. So you're just waiting on signed
Correct,
sheets from
yes.
all the agencies.
Yeah.
Have you received any yet?
Not yet, but we
Okay.
anticipated that this was gonna
Take
be
a
the
little
first
time.
lift and then.
Yeah, okay. So that's another homework item for everybody.
Have we been given the prep?
Yes, if not, I can send one.
Send one to me.
You-
Okay.
I'm sure I got it.
Yeah, you weren't at the last meeting.
No,
That's
I
what,
wasn't.
so it's on the agenda at the last meeting. If you pull that up, then you'll have that. Yeah. It's attached there. Okay, one thing I will note that we're gonna we need to develop a budget, so I'm gonna work with Jesse on that. That's according to our MOU. That is a coordinator responsibility. MID is actually the coordinator, but I'll be working with you, Jesse, to get something together. We'll be thinking about that $300,000 number and whether we want to front load that and have it ready, bill for that and invoice for that and have it ready in our account during the 2025 year, so that once we're ready to implement the well mitigation plan, that we have it ready to go in January 2026 without having to invoice everyone and collect those funds. And then we've got a number of other things we need to budget for this year, including some pretty big unknowns with respect to developing those management actions and the consulting fees and those sorts of things. So expect to have a discussion at the next meeting on that. That is all I have. Nothing else from anyone else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mike, second?
Second.
All right. Any other final comments, feedback from the public? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion adjourned. Let's go. All right. Adjourned, meeting adjourned. Thank you.